gone through their planning. And then the management is going to review that and suggest changes in scope or make adjustments due to resource constraints based on what the feedback from the team. And then the team's going to take that into consideration in the next team breakout. And then they're going to create their final plans based on all the feedback they've received from management and the discussions they've had with each other about when can we do this dependency. Then we're going to discuss the program risks. And with your program risks, you want to either have things resolved so the team agrees it's no longer a concern. Someone can own it. If you can't resolve it in the meeting, you have an owner and that person's responsible for making sure it gets taken care of. Then it's sometimes you just have to eat it because there's nothing can be done about it. So then that risk is accepted. And then sometimes you figure out, well, we can make this we can alleviate this somewhat, you mitigate it, and you have your mitigation plan there. And you work that out right there in that meeting with the same set of teams. And then after you finish that, the team does a vote of confidence. They do a fist of 5 vote of confidence. If you think it's the best plan ever, 5. If you think this isn't going to work, never, ever, ever, 0. You know, and somewhere in between, everybody votes. And if you have your averages 3 or higher, then the team is confident enough to proceed with this plan. If it's 2 or less, if it's less than 3 rather, you have to review why people are not confident. Why do they think it's not going to work? So you ask each one who has voted less than 3 and say what needs to be fixed in this plan, and they tell you. And sometimes you're like, we need to fix that, you know, and you do. Then you rework your plan, you revise it, and you start over again, and you then do another vote of confidence later. And sometimes it's, well, okay, it's just informational, and you can revote, and they'll go along, and the votes will change. Okay, so now let me see. And at the end of it all, of course, you do the retrospective as you might do in your after your sprint. But this is a retrospective about the release planning. How can we do this release planning better? Because something always goes wrong, you know? And maybe this doesn't work for that other remote team over there. You have to work it out a better way. Yes?
Could you share a few of scenarios that though something goes wrong and how you fix
will
it?
Very shortly.
Please.
Very shortly.
This is the ideal, right?
This is what it's supposed to be like. Go ahead.
So maybe you talk about this later, but okay, so you do your planning, everybody's working within their sprint windows, and there's going to be a new planning round come around. So everybody's head down, trying to finish the work in the sprints. They're inevitably finding more stuff as they go. They're trying to keep it under control. And then they wake up and now they're in a new planning meeting. Have they spent any time thinking about it?
Okay, so what you have is you have a planning iteration or a planning sprint. And in that planning sprint, you know, the first part of it, you do your deep dives, you do your pre-planning work. And then towards the end of it, you have this planning meeting.
But this is still in that 2-day cycle, right?
No, that's a 2-week
Okay.
product. It's a sprint. A
Okay.
planning sprint or a planning iteration, depending on what
So
term you
in
use.
between, you have that planning sprint.
So in the planning sprint, the teams will, if there's any overflow, the teams can catch up. You know, they didn't finish their last item, they can finish their last item, you know, in the sprint. They can, you can start doing your spikes, your research as to what it is that we're going to be working on. What we have to do to complete this new feature that's been requested, that kind of thing. So you get a start on that planning before the planning meeting.
Have you done this enough to have a sense how much stuff goes into that sprint planning meeting that's overflow, or is it relatively empty? I could see that whole thing being filled up with overflow.
As you get better at meeting your commitments in each sprint, and actually you understand your team's velocity and you can select the right amount of things, it gets better over time. But yes, there is a lot of overflow when you start doing this.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So how many of the risk factors amount to be things about construction? Like how often does static analysis come up? How often does disagreement about implementation language come up? I mean, how much, like should we buy our library or build our library? How many times, and libraries aren't just libraries, some of them are like whole frameworks and you go, how could anybody know this, right? And so there's a lot of...
Those are definitely risk factors, and they may come up. What
Yeah.
percentage, I have a hard time making a guess. But what you do is you plan for some time to do that research, to have those discussions during the coming sprints. You have to factor that into your estimation somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that might depend on if you're starting something from scratch versus
Right.
doing release 9.7 of a mature product or something like that.
Yeah. Alrighty, so then after that's done, since we're doing a scaled Agile, all of the planning that we've done needs to be shared with the other teams that are going to be having, their own related plannings and that depend on us. So we have a kind of a post-planning meeting to share that information with other teams. All right, so now let us move back towards this guy. Okay, so we're making our plans, and we had some challenges, okay? So we have geographically diverse teams. The team members on the same team are often not co-located. We have Dev in Sunnyvale and QA in Costa Rica, or something like that. And the teams and the leaderships in non-US locations are pretty much untrained in scaled Agile. For that matter, they're not trained in Agile either, right? They get their training through whatever I tell them. And also that we still have differing levels of agreement with Agile among the team leaders. Some people just still don't really want to be doing that. This is going to be happening. There's always those people, right? And then the people doing the portfolio planning at a higher level aren't actually trained in scaled Agile, so they don't always do it the way I might hope they would. And we don't have product owners. We have functional architects. These are members of the architecture team, and they report into the system architect, the head architect. And those poor people are supposed to be writing all of our user stories as well as doing all of the architecture. And okay.
How's that work out?
Could you tell me why there is an aversion to product owners? This is common across a lot of Agile stories out there, but I'd like to know your version.
So, basically, in our situation, the architects want control. They are the people who know what to do, and nobody else is to be trusted.
How Agile of them.
Not very! Yes.
And that leads to my next question is
Yeah.
about the training
Yeah.
that has a lot of value.
A lot of value.
A lot of value.
And our executive management has taken the training, but not the development leads and not the architects.
Okay, how would you come over that hurdle? Because if your architects who are going to be kind of product owners are not that agile, as John said, and the entire planning depends on them.
Right. It's one of the challenges we have to overcome. The big problem with it is it takes the agency away from the teams.
Uh-huh.
The teams feel like they have to do what somebody's telling them, as opposed to taking advantage of the brain power of the full team and letting people really work well as they're supposed to in Agile. But nevertheless, we proceed. Okay, so we had some challenges, and then let's see, we also have some constraints. So Lee earlier mentioned that he heard we were going to do a lab move. We had this lab move planned, and during the lab move, all of the systems are going to be down. Jira is going to be down, Perforce is going to be down, GitHub is going to be down, all the build servers are going to be down. nothing is going to be working. So the management says, this is the perfect time to do the release planning.
How's that working out?
That way, they won't interfere with the real work, yes. And also, the management had kind of an order in which they wanted the teams to do their planning, rather than having us all doing it once, which would have been more effective. But okay, so we do what we have to do. And then the Costa Rica management did not want to use a program board. We've actually done scaled agile plannings before and had like a video sharing the program board, and they didn't like that. That didn't work well for them. And so they said, no program boards. We're going to do something else this time. So we're agile. We try to think of something else.
What didn't I like about program boards?
Well, they didn't like that. So in your scaled agile planning, when you have different sites, the actual correct way of doing it is you make duplicate program boards. I maintain one over here, you maintain one over there, so the team maintains one over there. And it's just difficult to keep them in sync. But they basically, when we were working on it here and showing them the video of this program board, there were 20 people standing in front of it. They couldn't see it. So we have to have a better plan, you know.
Yeah, because a good program board, when you're all in the same room, there's people going up and, putting stuff and putting little, lines between them and stuff, and that's great, except it only works.
So it's a valid complaint, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the tool that you needed, which was the virtual program board, was not paid for by management, and nobody investigated that.
Right.
Okay, very good. I'm a big tools guy here.
Yes.
You're
All
onto
right,
something.
and so then one of our teams has a 14-hour time difference with the Sunnyvale team, and that's like, come work to work from midnight till 6 a.m. No. And another team has a 9-hour time difference, so we had to deal with these time differences.
How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I was going to ask
I'm
that.
going to tell you about that shortly. Okay. So we have, as we mentioned before, we have the initial t-shirt sizing for all of the PR requests was done by the functional architects. And that was, based on that, we narrowed the scope through a pretty standard, I guess, capacity planning exercises where you look at, how many weeks you have and how many people you have in each team. And we figured out what each team could do approximately. And that's what we gave the teams to scope. So then I had meetings where I would socialize the plan and talk and kind of teach people what we would do in the PI planning and what each of their roles would be. And guess who didn't attend those? So I was going to have the PI planning for the teams basically with dependencies on a couple of products. And those teams that have those dependencies just happen to be the 2 remote teams. And so I had them in the mornings. I gave them, my morning it was like 6 to 8 p.m. for the one team, and then 11 to 1 for the other team, and they insist it's fine. But they preferred that to come in early in the morning, I guess. So we have, I gave them their, they had their business overview, they had their marketing vision, they had their architectural overview, and then I gave them the session instructions. And then they went home, and then during their day, they did their breakout session. And then they would come back and do their presentation, and then we'd pick it up like that. So we just have to break the days differently for that type of a meeting. And I couldn't do it in 2 days. You can do it very nicely in 5 days, but that's too many. So we compromised and we did it in 3 days. That was the plan. So the breakout sessions at appropriate time for each team. I told them the instructions, I emailed the instructions, I sent a video of myself giving the instructions so they could see it, because not everybody stayed up from 11 to 1, right? Only a few representatives. And then I was going to do the PI planning for the other 2 teams and with a standard 2-day agenda on Thursday and Friday. And some of these other products that depend on us, they were going to come to team presentations where they show their draft plans and their final plans, so the other teams can take that information back to do their planning. And then the following week after that, we were going to do the joint planning with the other divisions teams. All right. So now, next. So since we had no tools, we only had SharePoint, Skype, and email, and we couldn't use a program board, we decided that we're going to put everything in SharePoint and Excel and Microsoft Word docs, which is exciting. So I'm going to open up some of these docs and show you. All right, so we have a release planning agenda, which is pretty much the agenda that you saw on the other board.